he knows how to score. He's mastered the art of scoring. And what I always like to say is that you have to understand defense if you want to be an effective scorer. And he understands that very well. So he controls his defender and he gets to the spots that he wants to get to score his basket.
Right now in May 2026, Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks are just 8 wins away from ending a 50-year championship drought. And the way they're dominating these playoffs, even the greatest Knicks teams in franchise history never produced stretches this overwhelming.
Pouring it on. Brunson throws it up and Bridges throws it down. Wow. Well, I'm going to take this highlight. Mikal Bridges.
In 2026, the New York Knicks are 8 wins away from ending a championship drought that's lasted more than half a century. They crushed Atlanta with a 47-point halftime lead, the biggest in NBA playoff history, then swept the Sixers for their first 7-game playoff sweep since 1999 while tying the NBA postseason record for most threes made in a playoff game. Through 10 playoff games, New York has been destroying teams by nearly 20 points per night, putting together what could become the greatest playoff run the league has ever seen. Meanwhile in Dallas, the Mavericks just finished a disastrous 26-56 season, sitting 12th in the West without Luka Doncic or Jalen Brunson. Mark Cuban sold the team and later admitted he regretted it. At first glance, the Knicks' rise and Dallas' collapse seem unrelated, but they're deeply connected because both stories trace back to one massive mistake involving Brunson. Most fans think the mistake happened in 2022 when Dallas let him walk in free agency. The truth is it started 4 years earlier on draft night in 2018, and what makes the whole thing incredible is that Mark Cuban wasn't wrong about Brunson once. He was wrong about him 3 separate times. That final mistake accidentally helped build the Knicks team now chasing a title. To understand how Dallas lost Brunson, you have to go back to the 2018 NBA draft. The Mavericks entered the night holding the 5th overall pick and the 33rd pick at the top of the second round. Everyone in the organization agreed on one thing: Luka Doncic was the best international prospect available. Mark Cuban believed it, Donnie Nelson believed it, and veteran scout Kevin Stackhouse believed it too. Dallas traded up with Atlanta from pick 5 to pick 3 and selected Luka. What nobody realized at the time was that Dallas was also about to stumble into another future star later that same night. As the second round approached and Dallas sat on the clock at 33, Donnie Nelson asked Kevin Stackhouse who he wanted. Stackhouse had Jalen Brunson ranked 19th overall on his personal draft board and saw him as a clear first-round talent. Brunson had won 2 national championships at Villanova, was one of the smartest guards in college basketball, and carried himself like a veteran. But inside the Mavericks war room, there was resistance. Head coach Rick Carlisle didn't want another point guard because he planned to expand Yogi Ferrell's role. Cuban wasn't enthusiastic either. According to Stackhouse, Cuban simply shook his head slowly, and everyone in the room understood that ownership wasn't sold on Brunson. The Mavericks were seconds away from passing on him entirely. Then something unexpected happened. The team's psychologist spoke up and backed Stackhouse. He reportedly said Dallas needed more players like Brunson. Players with toughness, leadership, and character. That changed the room. Dallas finally used the 33rd pick on Brunson, but even then the organization didn't fully believe in what they had. Years later, Cuban admitted Brunson's scouting report described him as a winner, but a little chubby and not super athletic. In the modern NBA, that profile scared teams away. Dallas only drafted Brunson because one scout kept pushing for him and another voice inside the room supported the pick at the last possible moment. Over the next 4 years, Brunson turned into one of the greatest second-round steals of the decade. He improved every season. By 2021, everything started clicking. He posted career highs in scoring, rebounding, and assists while finishing 4th and 6th Man of the Year voting. He became the perfect secondary creator next to Luka, someone who could run the offense when Doncic sat and stabilize the team in big moments. Brunson wasn't flashy, but he consistently delivered winning basketball. The Mavericks had found exactly the kind of intelligent, dependable guard every contender needs. But this is where Dallas completely lost control of the situation. The biggest misconception about Brunson leaving is that he desperately wanted New York from the beginning. That's not true. Brunson was actually prepared to stay in Dallas if the organization had shown faith in him early enough. The Mavericks had multiple opportunities to secure him on a cheaper extension before his breakout season exploded his value. They hesitated every single time. Dallas underestimated Brunson repeatedly. First, they doubted him as a prospect. Then they doubted his upside once he entered the league. Finally, they doubted whether he was worth committing long-term money to before free agency arrived. By the time Brunson dominated during the Mavericks' 2022 playoff run, especially when Luka missed games against Utah. His value had completely changed. New York recognized what Dallas still struggled to see. Brunson wasn't just a role player beside a superstar. He was a franchise-level lead guard capable of carrying an offense himself. The Knicks gave him the keys, and everything changed. Now, only a few years later, Brunson is leading New York toward a possible championship, while Dallas searches for answers after losing both him and Luka. The irony is brutal. The Mavericks discovered Brunson, developed him, watched him grow into an elite player, and still failed to realize what they had until it was too late. Meanwhile, New York built an entire contender around the player Dallas once nearly ignored on draft night.
Brunson ahead of steam. He burrows in deep and scores!
By the end of the 2021 season, Jalen Brunson had already proven he could be a real playoff piece next to Luka Doncic. He wasn't just another role player anymore. He was smart, dependable, tough under pressure, and one of the few guards in the league who could keep an offense flowing without completely changing the team's identity. That offseason, Brunson became eligible for a 4-year rookie extension worth roughly $55 million. For Dallas, it should have been an easy decision. Brunson was only 24 years old. He fit perfectly beside Luka. The locker room trusted him, and his production kept improving every season. From Brunson's perspective, the extension felt like a formality. He expected Dallas to put the contract in front of him before the 2021-22 season started, and he was fully prepared to sign it immediately. Part of that urgency came from family history. Brunson's father, Rick Brunson, had spent years in the NBA without ever getting the kind of long-term guaranteed contract that truly changes a player's life. So for Jalen, the extension wasn't just about money. It was about security. Stability mattered to him more than squeezing every possible dollar out of the market. Dallas had the chance to lock up a future all-star before his value exploded. Instead, they hesitated. The Mavericks front office told Brunson's camp they wanted more time to evaluate the roster before committing. They said they would revisit the extension closer to training camp. Then training camp arrived and still nothing happened. The bigger issue was that Dallas completely misread how valuable Brunson already was around the league. Internally, the Mavericks believed he wouldn't attract a massive free agent market if he reached unrestricted free agency. They reportedly thought the best offer he might receive would land somewhere around 4 years and $45 million. That assumption became one of the most expensive miscalculations in franchise history. Even after missing the first opportunity, Dallas still had several chances to fix the situation. Before the 2021-22 season officially tipped off, Brunson's camp made it very clear through his father that if the Mavericks did not offer the extension before opening night, negotiations would stop during the season. Brunson wanted clarity early. Dallas still did nothing. Then the season started, and Brunson immediately took another leap. When Luka missed games, Brunson stepped in and kept the Mavericks competitive. He earned a permanent starting role and showed he was much more than a sixth man. Suddenly, the player Dallas had been hesitant to commit to was becoming one of the best secondary creators in the entire conference. In early January, Brunson's camp swallowed its pride and approached Dallas again. They told the front office he would still accept the extension if it were offered at that moment. Somehow, Dallas hesitated again. Another chance appeared before the trade deadline. Through Brunson's agent, Aaron Mintz, the Mavericks were informed that if they created enough cap flexibility, they could renegotiate and extend Brunson immediately. Dallas once again chose not to act. According to Mark Cuban himself, internal conversations reflected a mindset that the organization wasn't going to make a massive financial decision based solely on what Brunson's camp claimed he wanted. The Mavericks believed they still controlled the situation. Eventually, after the trade deadline, Dallas finally placed the exact same 4-year, $55 million extension offer on the table. It was literally the deal Brunson had been willing to sign months earlier before his value skyrocketed. But by that point, everything had changed. Brunson understood what he had become. He knew he was outperforming the contract Dallas kept offering him. He knew he had already proven himself as the second best player on the roster. The extension no longer looked like respect. It looked like hesitation. Worse, it looked like the organization still didn't fully believe in him. Brunson declined the offer. From there, his value exploded even further. During the regular season, he averaged 16.3 points and 4.8 assists while continuing to grow into a reliable scorer and creator. But the moment that truly changed his career came during the 2022 playoffs. Luka Doncic suffered a calf strain and missed the first 3 games of Dallas's first-round series against Utah. Suddenly, the Mavericks needed Brunson to become the primary engine of the offense. Instead of shrinking under the pressure, he elevated his game completely. Across those first 3 games without Luka, Brunson averaged 32 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 5.3 assists while leading Dallas to a 2-1 series advantage. In Game 2, he exploded for 41 points and completely changed how the league viewed him overnight. He wasn't just a solid secondary guard anymore. He looked like someone capable of leading a franchise offense by himself. Even after Luka returned, Brunson continued thriving. Together, the two formed one of the most dangerous offensive backcourts in the playoffs, and pushed Dallas all the way to the Western Conference Finals. Over 18 playoff games that postseason, Brunson averaged 21.6 points, 4.6 rebounds, and 3.7 assists. Combined with Luka's scoring output, no duo in the playoffs produced more offense that year. Brunson had finally proven something to himself and to the rest of the NBA. He could be more than a number 2 option. He could run an offense, control playoff games, and carry a team through difficult stretches. Looking at how successful he and Luka had become together, most people assumed re-signing him would be automatic. That assumption turned out to be completely wrong. After Dallas was eliminated from the playoffs, Mark Cuban publicly spoke as if Brunson returning was already guaranteed. In interviews, he casually referred to re-signing JB like the paperwork was basically complete. He reminded everyone that Dallas held Brunson's bird rights, meaning the Mavericks could exceed the salary cap to keep him and offer more years and more money than any competing team. Cuban even publicly posted online that the Mavericks could pay Brunson the most money. Brunson reportedly saw the message and internally responded with silence. By then, trust had already been damaged. While Dallas believed it still controlled the situation, the Knicks were quietly positioning themselves to strike. 1 week after the Mavericks season ended, Rick Brunson joined Tom Thibodeau's coaching staff in New York. The connection between Brunson and the Knicks suddenly became very real. Then Knicks president Leon Rose began aggressively clearing salary cap space. New York traded away the 11th overall pick and moved contracts specifically to create financial room for Brunson. The message was obvious. The Knicks were all in. Dallas still believed it had the advantage because of money. Cuban's plan was reportedly to offer Brunson a deal similar to Fred VanVleet's contract, roughly 5 years and $105 million. From Dallas's perspective, that was strong value for a second-round pick. The Mavericks also believed that if Brunson somehow decided to leave, they could at least work out a sign-and trade and recover assets in return. That leverage disappeared quickly. New York continued clearing cap room, moving contracts, and attaching draft compensation to make sure enough money was available for Brunson. ESPN soon reported that the Knicks planned to offer over $100 million across 4 years. Dallas still scheduled one final meeting in New York on June 30th and theoretically could have gone as high as 5 years and $175 million. They also had the Texas advantage of no state income tax. On paper, Dallas still possessed financial advantages, but none of it mattered anymore because the relationship had already fractured. Before the Mavericks could even make their final pitch, the meeting was cancelled. Brunson had already made his decision. The player Dallas nearly passed on during draft night, underestimated during his rookie contract, and hesitated to pay at every possible turn was gone. And in losing him, the Mavericks didn't just lose a guard. They accidentally helped create the foundation of a Knicks team now chasing an NBA championship. By the summer of 2022, the split between the Dallas Mavericks and Jalen Brunson looked like just another free agency story. A talented guard left one franchise for a bigger role somewhere else. Teams lose players all the time. But 4 years later, in May 2026, it's impossible to look at what happened and treat it like a normal roster mistake. The New York Knicks are now sitting in the Eastern Conference Finals with a legitimate chance to win their first NBA championship since 1973. Jalen Brunson is the centerpiece of everything they do. He controls the pace, dictates matchups, punishes defenses in isolation, and turns every fourth quarter into his own personal chess match. Through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, New York has been destroying teams by historic margins, outscoring opponents by nearly 20 points per game. They look like the most complete team left standing. Meanwhile, the Mavericks are staring at the wreckage of what used to be one of the league's brightest futures. Luka Doncic is gone. Mark Cuban no longer controls the franchise. Nico Harrison was fired. Dallas just finished a miserable 26-56 season and missed the playoffs again. And the more distance that grows between these two organizations, the clearer the truth becomes. The Mavericks didn't just lose Brunson. They misjudged him repeatedly, over and over again, until the consequences reshaped the future of both franchises. The ending officially arrived in July of 2022. When Brunson agreed to a 4-year contract with the Knicks worth over $100 million. Around the league, the move felt massive. Dallas had just reached the Western Conference Finals. Brunson and Luka had formed one of the most dangerous offensive pairings in basketball. Most people assumed the Mavericks would do whatever it took to keep him, but internally, the relationship had already been damaged long before free agency opened. The Mavericks had spent years treating Brunson like a player they appreciated instead of a player they needed. That distinction changed everything. When Dallas drafted Brunson in 2018, they almost passed on him entirely. One scout inside the organization loved him and fought for him aggressively. Others weren't convinced. Brunson's scouting profile didn't fit the mold of a modern NBA star. He wasn't explosive. He wasn't especially athletic. Critics questioned his size and upside. Even Mark Cuban reportedly showed hesitation during the draft process. Eventually, Dallas selected him with the 33rd pick. That decision ended up becoming one of the greatest steals of the decade. Over the next 4 years, Brunson improved every single season. He developed into the perfect secondary creator next to Luka. He stabilized bench units, punished switches, and gave Dallas another player who could run the offense when defenses trapped Doncic. By the 2021-22 season, it was obvious he was no longer just a role player. He was becoming essential. That offseason, Brunson became eligible for a 4-year rookie extension worth roughly $55 million. For Dallas, it should have been easy. Brunson was only 24 years old. He fit the culture. He fit Luka. He produced every night. Around the league, the number was viewed as extremely reasonable. Brunson himself expected the extension to happen quickly. For him, it wasn't only about money. It was about long-term security. His father, Rick Brunson, had spent years in the NBA without ever landing the kind of guaranteed financial stability many players chase. Jalen understood how quickly careers could change. He was reportedly prepared to sign the extension immediately. Dallas hesitated. The front office wanted more time. They wanted to evaluate the roster. They wanted to wait. That hesitation became the first major turning point. Training camp arrived. No offer. The regular season approached. Still nothing. Privately, the Mavericks believed Brunson's market around the league wouldn't explode. They assumed his value in free agency would remain relatively modest, maybe somewhere around 4 years and $45 million. That assumption aged terribly. Before the season started, Brunson's camp reportedly made it clear that if Dallas didn't finalize the extension before opening night, negotiations would stop during the year. Dallas still didn't move. Then Brunson took another leap. Whenever Luka missed time, Brunson carried the offense. He earned a full-time starting role. His confidence expanded. His scoring jumped. His decision-making sharpened. By January, Brunson's camp returned to Dallas with another opportunity. Despite the frustration, they were still willing to sign the original extension if the Mavericks offered it. Dallas hesitated again. Another chance arrived before the trade deadline. Brunson's representatives informed the Mavericks that there were ways to clear enough flexibility to renegotiate and extend him immediately. Again, Dallas declined. Months later, Cuban admitted the organization simply didn't want to rush into a decision based on outside pressure, so the Mavericks waited. And by the time they finally placed the 4-year, $55 million extension on the table after the trade deadline, the entire situation had changed. Brunson had outgrown the deal. What once felt like security now felt disrespectful. He had become too important. Then came the playoff run that transformed his reputation permanently. In the first round of the 2022 playoffs, Luka suffered a calf injury and missed the opening games against Utah. Suddenly, Dallas needed Brunson to become the primary creator against the playoff defense. He delivered immediately. Over the first 3 games without Luka, Brunson averaged over 30 points per game and helped Dallas grab a 2-1 series lead. In Game 2, he exploded for 41 points. That performance changed everything. It forced the league to see him differently. Brunson was no longer viewed as a complementary guard benefiting from Luka's gravity. He looked capable of running an offense himself. Even after Doncic returned, the duo remained dominant together. Dallas advanced all the way to the Western Conference Finals, and Brunson averaged over 21 points per game throughout the postseason. By then, most people around the NBA assumed Dallas would lock him up long-term. Mark Cuban publicly acted like retaining Brunson was basically inevitable. The Mavericks had bird rights. They could offer more money than anyone. They could offer an extra year. On paper, Dallas held every advantage. But what they failed to understand was that free agency is not only about contracts. It's about trust. And trust had already been damaged. While Dallas operated as if Brunson would naturally stay because they drafted and developed him, the Knicks spent months making him feel wanted. New York hired Rick Brunson onto Tom Thibodeau's coaching staff. Leon Rose aggressively maneuvered to clear cap space. The Knicks created a full organizational pitch centered around Jalen Brunson becoming the face of the franchise. That mattered. To Brunson, New York wasn't simply offering money. They were offering belief. Dallas only fully recognized the danger once it was too late. As free agency approached, Cuban reportedly envisioned offering something similar to Fred VanVleet money, around 5 years and $105 million. But by then, the Knicks had already made their intentions obvious. New York dumped salary. They moved draft assets. They opened cap room aggressively. Everything pointed toward Brunson. Dallas scheduled a final meeting in New York before free agency officially opened. The Mavericks still believed they could save the relationship. The meeting never happened. It was canceled before Dallas could even make its final pitch. That same night, Brunson committed to the Knicks. The NBA later investigated the Knicks for early contact and penalized them with the loss of a second-round pick. In the grand scheme, it barely mattered. The Mavericks had already lost far more. Cuban later admitted publicly that, knowing what Brunson eventually became, he would have paid the contract immediately without hesitation. But the real problem wasn't the final negotiation. The real problem was every missed opportunity before it. Dallas had years to secure Brunson before free agency ever became dangerous. Instead, they kept betting against his growth. Now the contrast between the franchises is impossible to ignore. In New York, Brunson transformed the Knicks into one of the league's most stable contenders. Since arriving, the Knicks have consistently won games, advanced in the playoffs, and rebuilt belief around the franchise. Before Brunson arrived, New York spent decades cycling through instability. They rarely won playoff series. They struggled to attract stars. The organization constantly felt stuck between rebuilding and desperation. Brunson changed the culture almost immediately. He gave the Knicks structure. He gave them late-game composure. Most importantly, he gave them identity. Now, in May 2026, New York looks closer to a championship than it has in over half a century. Brunson is at the center of all of it. He controls every possession. He manipulates defenses. He punishes mismatches. He turns playoff basketball into something methodical and brutal. The Knicks built the roster around his strengths, and the results have become historic. Meanwhile, Dallas lost not only Brunson, but eventually the foundation they thought would survive without him. The Mavericks reached the NBA Finals in 2024 with Luka and Kyrie Irving, but the run ended badly against Boston. Then the organization spiraled. Ownership changed. Luka was traded to the Lakers. The roster collapsed. Even drafting Cooper Flagg after winning the lottery couldn't stabilize the franchise immediately. Everything feels uncertain now. And when people look back at where the split truly began, it keeps leading to the same conclusion. Dallas had Brunson in the building. They identified his talent. They watched him improve. They had multiple opportunities to commit, and every single time, they hesitated. That hesitation changed NBA history. Because in New York, Brunson became more than a good signing. He became the engine of a championship-level team. The same player Cuban once doubted on draft night. The same player Dallas lowballed during extension talks. The same player they assumed would stay no matter what. Now, he's 8 wins away from delivering a championship to the Knicks. And the Mavericks are left wondering how different everything could have been if they had simply believed in him sooner.